Hello, friends. I have another special interview lined up for you this week, basically because I'm going out of town for the weekend and I don't have time to record all of the great news that came out of CES and everything else that's been happening in the EV world. So I did recently sit down with Andy Garberson of Recurrent, and I wanted to share that conversation with all of you, where we discussed their company, the mission, and of course the importance of a battery health check. Now, in the world of EVs, nothing is more important than knowing the health of your battery pack, but unfortunately, that information is somewhat unknown. Recurrent is working to pull back the curtain by collaborating with thousands of EV owners and drivers, myself included, by using advanced machine learning to analyze a massive amount of data. Recurrent's mission is to provide more transparency and confidence in pre-owned electric car transactions in order to accelerate the overall adoption of electric vehicles. And that's something that I'm pretty sure we can all celebrate. So without further ado, let's get right to the conversation with Andy. Andy, I want to thank you for coming back and having another conversation with me. I am a firm believer in Recurrent and what you guys offer to the marketplace and to EV owners. So I really want to share with the audience what it is that you guys do, the value you're bringing, and why it's so important that EV owners really consider signing up with Recurrent to get a lot of this information that you're going to share with us.
That's great. Well, thanks, Zach. It's always great to be here.
If we could just start from the beginning, I'm sure there's people that are going to be watching and listening to this that have no idea what Recurrent is. Let's just start from scratch. What is Recurrent, and kind of walk us through how it all works?
Yeah, absolutely. Recurrent makes it easier to buy and own electric vehicles by understanding and appropriately valuing the vehicle battery. I imagine most people out there have used a vehicle condition report at some point, whether you were buying a used car or selling a used car. But those reports aren't designed for cars with electric motors. You know, while a combustion engine has 2,000 moving parts and the electric vehicle has only 20, we need to keep in mind that the most expensive and valuable part in that car is a black box, the battery. And so what we're doing is working to make the expected range that someone would have day in and day out, regardless of temperature and climate and age, more transparent over time for every EV owner. And so we try to help people at each stage of the transaction process for electric cars. If you own an EV, you probably want to know when to sell that car at a premium. And so we offer a monthly monitoring report that's free for EV owners. Vehicles with telematics or connected services can connect one time and authenticate Recurrent to capture 4 anonymous data points a couple of times a day. And then we're able to send you a report every month that allows you to follow your progress of your car, how that battery is changing over time and how quickly it's degrading, and then also compare it to thousands of other vehicles on the road that it allows you to just have a bit more information about where your car is and where it's going.
I'm gonna stop
Yep,
you right there.
absolutely.
Jump in, and I want to ask, what are the information that you guys are getting? What you had mentioned a few points, data points. What are the data points that you guys are collecting?
Yeah, we really just want to know essential things about the battery. We don't want to know where you're going or what you're doing. Privacy is front and center for Recurrent. Trust needs to be key for us and our community. And so the things that we're looking at are the state of charge, whether that vehicle is plugged in or not, whether it's charging or not, and then the odometer. Those are the things that help us know how the battery is performing. When you sign up, we do ask you for a zip code. So we don't follow your vehicle where you're going. We just want to know during an average day where it's living its life. Because you might imagine, if you've owned a vehicle for a long time, one in southern Texas in 110-degree heat day after day after day might have a different battery and a different battery life trajectory than one that lives in Juneau, Alaska.
Sure. So then you guys gather this information, and if somebody's subscribed to the monthly reports, what kind of information do you guys provide back to EV owners in those reports? What does that what does that breakdown look like?
Yeah, a couple of important things. One would be a month in review, so understanding charging behavior. So average states of charge, and we try to provide recommendations if we see things that are going outside of what we found to be healthy charging habits. We also compare that vehicle to similar vehicles on the road to understand where you are in that estimated range. And and that's valuable for a few reasons. One would be just understanding when the right time is to sell, whether you're at the top and your car is at its most valuable, or maybe you're at the lower end of the expected range. And you might want to know that or be able to pass that along to someone who's buying the car. The other thing that we're trying to provide is some guesses around vehicle value. And so right now we are looking at vehicles in different regions and pricing in that region and trying to provide some recommendations to owners around what they can expect as a trade-in value.
Sure. And that's something that actually I don't think you had mentioned the last couple times we've talked about. So that maybe that's something that new that you've added. But that's really neat that you give that information based on knowledge that as an individual owner, I might not know that. And honestly, I probably don't want to do all the research to check every other car and see what the average value is. I'd probably just go to KBB and type it in, and then who knows? It's not necessarily as accurate probably as something that you guys would be able to provide.
Well, yeah, I think that's right. We look at it like one data point in part of the selling process. So you're right. You go to an online estimator site and you look at that as a data point, like a KBB. You might go to an online retailer like a CarMax or Carvana and get an estimate from them. You'd use your Recurrent report, and then you might also go to a local dealership too for something that's a bit more micro rather than macro, so something
Sure.
that's more regionally specific. So we see it as an important part of the selling process, and it's just an extra data point to help inform sellers.
The used EV market, as the EV adoption is just accelerating, the used EV market is where I think the majority of future EV buyers are going to have access to this technology. Most people don't just outright buy a new car, especially these days, because over the last 6 months, pricing has just gone out of control. So having a report on the most important a part of the car, the battery, there's a lot of value to that. Is that something that an EV owner is going to have to pay for in order to get this potentially valuable thing to show to maybe a dealer when they're trading in, or a private buyer if they're selling their car?
No, so all of the reports that we help individuals create are free. So totally free for EV owners and EV shoppers. The one way that our young business does make money is that we allow car dealers to run bulk reports. So it's a very similar report that you would get as an EV shopper, but they're running them with a bit more frequency, higher
Sure.
volume, and so we do charge a subscription for that. But if you're like you or me, and you're shopping for a car, or you own an EV, those are totally free, and I would encourage you to sign up, particularly if you live in places that have temperature fluctuations or anything else that could impact estimated range day in and day out.
Absolutely. So those areas that are like extreme heat, or on the flip side of that, extreme cold, do you
Or these days, so maybe it's both.
depends on the day,
That's
stick
right.
around, the weather will change. Do you guys have a lot of EV owners that have already subscribed across the country and potentially Canada, or is this a global thing? I mean, if somebody's in Germany, can they subscribe to this as well?
No, I appreciate you bringing that up. Right now, recurrent reports are only available in the United States.
Okay.
So, we get a lot of interest from people outside the US that are maybe further along that EV adoption curve than Americans.
Yep.
But today we're only available in the US. So we certainly have had a lot of interest in Canada and the EU, and we will be getting there as soon as we possibly can. But if you're in the US, you can get a Recurrent report today.
Yeah. And I mean, from a data aspect, uh, manufacturers, of course, have a lot of data about their own cars, but they're not going to have data about competitors' vehicles. Where you guys, as a third party, have this advantage where you can look at any, well, I shouldn't say any, I know there's some limitations, but any connected EV that across the board, regardless of manufacturer, and then you have access to now this data group from the extremes. I mean, you can see if a car is in Minnesota, right is probably as coldest, at least in the 48 states that you can get, versus someone that lives in Southern California or Arizona, where it's going to be these extremes, and compare the battery health based on those geographical areas in similar vehicles.
Yeah, and you're right. A vehicle manufacturer would have a tremendous amount of data about vehicles that bear their logo. We're trying to add that value as a third party by looking across different manufacturers and across different parts of right now the United States, and hopefully someday the world. Um, you mentioned that almost all vehicles can get a report, and that's spot on. Right now we work with 34, 35, 30 something makes and models in the US. There are a few that we aren't able to support. Some of those that do not have a connected services account. And also there are a few new vehicles like the Polestars. And interestingly, the ID4 we're not able to support
Really?
at the moment, but working on
Sure.
that with VW. So for some of the older vehicles, though, that don't have telematics, you can create a one-time report. So we're not able to connect to your car and pull that information each day, but you can sign into Recurrent. And it's just like you might use when you deposit a check at the bank, where you take a few photos, you enter some
Sure.
information, and we're going to be able to create a one-time report for you. So that's pretty popular with some of our older Nissan Leaf owners.
Yeah, sure. Or I would imagine like the Smart for 2 EV, or the older Mitsubishi My EVs, or some cars that just they didn't come with a cellular card in them to be connected. Is that pretty much what you guys need? Like if an EV owner wants to sign up and subscribe to having these free monthly reports with all of this valuable information in it, do they just need to provide, I guess, login credentials to their account, or how does that work in terms of giving you guys access to the car?
Yeah, it's a good question. What we ask is for either your VIN or your license plate to be able to look up the make, model, and confirm the trim. And when we're confirming these things, really we're interested about the battery, so being able to understand the particular battery that's in your vehicle. And then we ask you to authenticate Recurrent to be able to take those several anonymous data points each day. So Recurrent isn't storing your information. We're not asking you to send us your password. We just ask you to authenticate the Recurrent platform to be able to connect that data.
And how easy is that to do? I mean, I've done it myself, so I know, but I'm gonna let you share how easy is that for somebody that has like a Tesla as an example to be able to sign up?
It takes a few minutes. So you'd go to recurrentauto.com, you'd select the sign up for a report button, and then you're able to quickly go through the steps, verify your vehicle information, add your zip code, connect your vehicle, and then the kind of the longest part of the process is aggregating that data over the first 30 days. We do try to wait a month to send you your first report so that we have confidence in the data that we're sending you. If we sent you a report based on just a couple of days, it just wouldn't be as accurate as if we had a
Sure.
month, or imagine a year or 5 years worth of recording. So that's why we wait the 30 days to send that first report.
I think I'm still waiting on my first report for the Model 3. Um, but I'm excited because I'm really looking forward to seeing the brand new car. I mean, we only got it delivered just a couple months ago, so to see how it progresses over the next few years, and have that data for me. I mean, I can look up generally Tesla more than other manufacturers. I would imagine how batteries tend to degrade over time based on manufacturer and when the batteries were made. Tesla's weird, especially with the Model 3, because they've changed so much. So it'll be interesting to see how my car does versus just Model 3s in general. So that's really neat. That's something that for people that really like to dive into technical details and data. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So
No,
um,
and I'm so excited that you signed up right at the beginning because there will be some change in that first year, and so you'll be
sure.
able to track your vehicle's estimated range for the first year and see how it adapts to you, your driving, your charging style, your climate. And if you don't own a Model 3 yet, or you're waiting on delivery of your next Model 3, we actually started aggregating and publishing vehicle data on our website. So it's all anonymized. And then with our Model 3, it's over 2,000 Model 3s that are contributing data. And so even if you don't have a vehicle to connect to get those reports, you can go to our website and you can look at Model 3s in general and what to expect over time, which I think is really handy, whether you're just a Tesla lover or you're thinking about making your
Yeah,
first purchase.
mentioning that it brings to light something that you're not going to find in many places is this aggregated group of vehicles, this data on battery performance or battery health over time. Aside from Teslas, are there any other vehicles that you guys are publishing that data for?
Yeah, we actually publish 13 different makes and models on our website. So we do have four Teslas. We have the 3, the S, the X, and the Y. So in addition to that, we'd have 9 other popular EV makes and models in the United States anyway. So uh, go over, check it out, and I think there's some really interesting information about expected range, degradation over time, range in different weather and different climate conditions, and also some interesting things about batteries and warranties and just general EV owner education.
Sure. And so if I were in the market to buy an EV, that is definitely something I'd want to look at because it's like a one-stop shop for that kind of battery health over time and what to expect. Does that information kind of account for um, perhaps like one of the things that I see a lot on some of the chat groups or forums is people that are brand new owners that they expect to get the range that is published for their vehicle. And now that it's winter in much of the US, people aren't getting that and they're not aware of how the cold weather affects their battery in terms of range. The data that you guys have, is there something that separates out what to expect in the summer versus the winter? Or is it just kind of across the board what you guys have seen?
Yeah, the EPA range is wrong on day one, right? It's an average, it's an estimate. It's not tailored to you and your vehicle and your region. And so that can be a steep learning curve for some people, like you said. So I definitely recommend whether you are an EV owner and you're just kind of now going into your first winter and need to maybe adjust your charging and range expectations. Um, or you're thinking about buying your first EV and you want to know realistically what you're going to see next winter. You can go to the website and look at model by model and the range expectations for different battery sizes and different model years. The other thing that you can do is we just launched a report that compares the 13 models that we have published data on, and it looks at all of those in the winter. And so it's becoming pretty popular right now as those temperatures dip below freezing for the first time across the US. And so that went out on our website this week and is available
Awesome.
for all EV owners.
That is exactly the information that many people are going to be looking for. I know it's popular with a lot of us in the EV community to put out at this time of year, like different tips and tricks to how to survive the winter in an EV, which kind of makes it sound a little too like you need to do anything special, which of course those of us who have been in it a while know you really don't. But somebody that isn't an EV owner, they have these concerns, they have these apprehensions about getting into being an EV owner. And I think information like that, that's based on data, like raw data that is analyzed, that is much more valuable than even something that I would put together to be like, hey, here's what you got to do. Because of course, I don't have information about 13 different makes and models VVs and how they each perform. So that is definitely something that I think there's a lot of value in that for prospective EV owners, new EV owners. But then once again, I love data, so I'm gonna I'm gonna check that out as well, just to see what it looks like and how all these other makes and models are performing. I think that's really great that you guys are starting to publish that information.
Yeah, as we become smarter, we want to help make everyone else smarter too. I think we're, as an EV community, everyone is great about sharing information and helping to lift each other up. And so, yeah, our goal was always to kind of publish what we learn and help every EV owner navigate their vehicle and just the challenges that they might experience with range over the life of the car.
Yeah, that's really great. So I got to ask, if you're able to say, what do you guys have planned coming down the road in terms of different reports and things that you intend to share? Or do you have anything that you really want to be able to share, but maybe you're waiting because you don't have enough vehicles connected to be able to do it?
Yeah, our focus right now is on improving our reports for EV shoppers. Um, a little bit earlier, I mentioned that you can create a one-time report if your
Mhm.
vehicle doesn't have telematics. Well, the nice thing is that you could also create a one-time report when you're standing on a car lot. So as you're walking down a row of EVs for sale, you can take a seat in the front seat, snap a few photos, enter some information, and create a battery report for that vehicle on the spot. So it can be completed and in your inbox in just a couple of minutes. Uh, that's something that we see as a big opportunity, especially as more EVs become available on the secondary market.
Yeah.
So much of the EV transactions that have occurred to date have been new EVs, but now all of those 2018 Model 3s, those 2017 and 2018 Bolts are becoming available on the secondary market. And so people have questions that they might not have for a new EV.
So let me make sure I understand what you just said and translate it possibly.
Hmm.
If I'm shopping for an EV and I just happen to be walking onto, like, let's say a used car lot, they're not a manufacturer dealership, they're just Joe's corner lot. If he's got an EV for sale, I can get a report on that car within minutes.
Yeah, you can do that today for a handful of vehicles. So our focus is to continue to build out the breadth of the vehicles that we're able to create that report for, but also add to the depth. So add more information about the vehicle history, improve the science that's going into that report, and all around help people be more informed as purchasers. So that's really what we're thinking about as we head into 2022. But if you drive or you're looking for a Tesla, you're looking for a Leaf, you're looking for an e-Golf, you can use that one-time report today to generate a report for shoppers.
That's really neat. And there's a lot of value in that. When um, buying an EV, it's so helpful for the buyer to be armed with as much information about that vehicle as possible so that they can then really, it comes down to price. I mean, they can argue for the best price for them if they're armed with this kind of information. I know a lot of used car dealerships locally. I won't speak to the used car dealerships everywhere, but locally that I've personally spoken to, they don't know a whole lot about electric vehicles. They don't have electric vehicles for sale, maybe one or two a year right now. That's changing. It's becoming more and more frequent. But if I were to want to purchase an electric vehicle from them, the information that they are providing is the same kind of information, the same data points, if you will, that is of the gas car that's sitting right next to it. There's nothing that's specific to that car. And through no fault of their own, it's just because they really don't know about EVs. If they have one traded in, they're going to treat it like every other car that they get. So, as a potential buyer, this is really valuable so that they can then be armed with the information that they need. You don't need the dealership or the used car dealership to know everything about the car if you do.
I think that's right, and we don't fault car dealers for that, because you're right. They're doing what has been the standard in the industry for decades, and it doesn't replace a vehicle condition report necessarily. That you also want to know if the vehicle
Yes.
has been in an accident, or if it has liens against the title. So those are still important to know, but with electric cars, there is a missing piece, and that is the condition of the battery. And one of the things that we've heard from people who are shopping or selling, is that if a vehicle has a lower than expected battery report, that doesn't mean the vehicle isn't worth buying. It just means that the price should reflect the battery and the range that you're going to see.
Sure.
So if you are an EV owner and you run a report for the first time, and maybe you're surprised or discouraged to see how your vehicle compares to others, it doesn't mean that all is lost. It just means that you might adapt your expectations down the road when it comes time to sell.
Sure. Sure. And I think there's value in knowledge, but knowledge is only powerful when it's applied. So it really makes a difference as an owner. If I did find out, like with my Chevy Spark EV, people know that I've had this car. Um, I have pulled a lot of data through an app on a tablet and kind of connected to the car. And it's funny that I've got one EV with the Model 3 that's at the beginning of its life for the battery, and the Spark, I've not been very good to it. I charge it very quickly. I also discharge it very quickly. I've taken it to the track. I run it around. I've gone on road trips where I've fast charged 8 times in a day. I've been very hard on this car and therefore the battery. And it would be nice if I didn't know everything that I know, to be able to pull a report and go, okay, well, here's what I've really done. Um, Compared to other Spark EVs specifically, I would not expect my car to be in as good a shape as others. If I were to sell that to somebody, I would want them to know, to be able to expect that, because the EPA range, like you said, I mean, it was wrong on the day the car was sold. It's definitely wrong now. So I think what we're talking about ultimately is just the power of information, regardless of who's using that, whether it be a dealer to help inform potential buyers, whether it be a buyer that's heard this or is aware of Recurrent that can then use that information to be applied to purchasing a vehicle. I love the fact that it just takes a couple minutes. They could be walking through a lot and in a couple minutes have more information about the car that they're looking at. That's great that they don't have to wait a couple days, because when you're in front of it, you want to know right away. It's really just the value of information and then how you use that information, whether you're buying or selling, or just as an owner, to be aware of how your charging habits are potentially affecting the battery. If somebody does find that perhaps they're not doing the right thing, or maybe they don't know what the right way to charge an EV is, in these reports that you guys give, do you include any tips or recommendations to change their charging behavior, or any information that can then kind of highlight potential concerns?
We try to mention the things that we see, but I would encourage people to go even further beyond that. So I've made the joke that I'm the least educated person at the company, and I've got a master's degree. I'm surrounded by brilliant PhDs that have been nice enough to help us write blog articles and create ebooks and white papers and a bunch of different learning materials on our website. And so that's an important part of the education process too. Yes, we want to provide you with the data to make you informed in a monthly report, and we'll try to give you nudges when we can see things. But I would encourage you to go out and see some of the things on our website too. And Zach, the content that you're creating too is fantastic and makes people better educated. So yes, it's certainly the reports are part of the education process, but I would remind you that there's so much more out there to help kind of raise your level of knowledge, EV fluency, let's say.
I definitely agree with that. Naturally, I wouldn't be doing the magazine and this podcast and everything else if I felt like there wasn't work to be done. The EV community as a whole, across the board, with everybody that I talk to, one of the constant themes is the need for education to help people transition through this process of getting more EVs on the road and what that's like for not only owners, but for municipalities and commercial businesses and everybody that's going to be affected by this, which is everybody. I mean, this is easily one of the biggest technological changes that our world has ever seen. I mean, over the last 250 years, there's been a lot of change, but to go from the gas-powered engine to an electric powered vehicle, whether it's boat, scooter, skateboard, I mean, EVs are permeating across every possible area of transportation. Knowledge is really where the power lies. I mean, I thought when I first bought my Spark that I knew a lot about EVs. I started EV Resource because after buying it, I realized I didn't know. I thought I knew a lot, but there were so many questions that I had that I didn't realize that I should have known before I even bought it. And of course, over the last 3 years, I'm still learning. I'm still gathering all of this information. And you are one of the people that's helped me take a look at how the EV world is from a slightly different perspective. And I really value that because that's information that I think not only I want to know, I mean, I'm really excited about it, but I think everybody that I have the ability to touch through the podcast, whether it be audio only or the YouTube videos, I want them to be able to know all of this too. So,
no,
I don't know where I was
it's
going
great.
with that,
You're right. And education is such an important part of this because we're all going through it for the first or second or third time, but it's still very new to all of us. And I think there are a couple of other things that are important there. One is that there is a lot of misinformation. Anytime something's new and has any chance of being politicized, there's misinformation. And then the other side of it is that we also need to unlearn some of the things that we're bringing in, the mental models that we're using.
Sure.
We've all had an iPhone long enough to know that the battery degrades over time and that you're not going to be able to talk on it all day long after 5 years. And while some of those things are the same with an EV, the chemistry is similar. It's not apples and apples, it's apples and oranges. And so understanding battery management systems and degradation expectations over time and calendar age of batteries, those are all parts of EV ownership now.
Sure. So a question that popped into my head while you were saying that, one of the things that I guess is, as I see it, misinformation about electric vehicles is how short the battery life is. People with their phones, you get 3 to 5 years out of it, and that's really good. With a car, of course, most people are wanting to keep their cars 10, 15 years even. Or if they're buying a used car that's already 5 years old, are you guys able to see at least trends on the life of a battery so that you can kind of at least throw a potential expectation of how long the average EV battery pack is going to last? I know a lot of the information that you guys are going to get isn't with cars that are 10 years old at this point, because there aren't that many 10-year-old EVs out there. But do you guys have kind of enough data that you've gathered to be able to say, it looks like most EV batteries are going to last 10, 15 years. I mean, do you have that yet?
We have enough to be able to say that the vehicle battery is going to be valuable inside of that automobile for a lot longer than people think going into it. And that is, like you said, from some of the other experience that we have using batteries. But I always encourage people to look at the warranties. I think a warranty tells you a lot about
Sure.
the battery expectation too. Manufacturers don't want to insure things that they're guaranteed to replace. And so an 8-year or a 10-year warranty tells you plenty about the life of that battery. And I would, I would also share that battery replacements are very interesting to us. As a company that studies how batteries degrade over time, it's important for us to know when batteries are replaced, why batteries are replaced, thinking about different chemistries, different battery factories and points of origin. And so a lot of the replacements that we're seeing are from technical defects or problems with the manufacturing process, not the battery wearing out and it just degrading due to natural causes. So I think that's something else that can be encouraging for EV owners.
I would absolutely agree with that. Now I said I wasn't going to touch on it, but you just brought up, battery replacements due to manufacturing issues. You guys are going to get a lot of data with these battery pack replacements that GM is doing for the Bolt. Is there anything that you guys are excited about with that process to be able to gather data? Um, is there something specific that you guys are looking forward to with that?
Yeah, it's going to tell us a lot about a new battery in an older vehicle. So, as you think about a 2017 or a 2018 Bolt, they might have 30 or 50 or even 70,000 miles on the odometer. But we've seen that odometer is the fourth or fifth leading indicator of battery performance. And these vehicles are going to have brand new batteries. So in some ways, they're brand new cars.
Sure.
And so we're really excited to follow that. And it's not a one replacement here, one replacement there. We're talking about 140,
Yeah.
145,000
Every single one of them.
vehicles all across the United States, which is a region that we understand pretty well. And we'll be able to follow how those batteries change in the first year and the second year, because they're all kind of resetting that figurative odometer at virtually the same time. So while we certainly are not celebrating the fact that all of these vehicles are having their batteries replaced, or just kind of the challenge that it has created in the EV industry, we are definitely interested in learning from this because I think there are going to be some valuable lessons, not just for the OEMs and vehicle manufacturers, but also for drivers that are navigating battery replacements.
Yes. Yeah. And once again, you guys have this opportunity as a third party. You don't have skin in the game. Whatever happens, just collecting the data is what's valuable to you guys. You don't necessarily have a need to skew the data one way or the other. Whatever it shows, you guys can report on that. So there's a lot of value in having a resource like that, because I mean, we'll be honest, manufacturers are going to hesitate when sharing bad news. They don't want to do that. You guys, on the other hand, good, bad, whatever the result may be, you're going to share that so people can really rely on you guys to be a valuable source of that information without having to worry about whether it's tainted or leaning one way or the other.
Yeah, and we certainly don't think that anyone is lying about range or batteries. But the concept of grading your own homework has a stigma for a
Yeah.
reason. And so we think that our value to the EV community is being a neutral third party and to be able to report on the things that we see, and not just anecdotally in this one scenario, but across millions of miles. Our community is just about to hit 50 million EV miles. And that is an exciting milestone. As that number becomes 100 million or 200 million or 500 million, our ability to inform the rest of the EV world will improve. And so that's something that makes us pretty excited.
Great. So to wrap up, what is the way that people can take action on everything that they've heard us talking about today? If they want to sign up to get monthly reports or even that one-time report, where do they need to go? What do they need to do?
Yeah, if you own an EV, we'd love it if you join us. So come to recurrentauto.com and sign up for monthly reports. If you don't own an EV, but you're thinking about it, you're EV curious here, also come to the website and explore the different makes and models that you find most interesting. They're in our research section, and we've created guides for each vehicle. And then, keep us in mind as you go shop, especially if you're looking for a used EV. So the next time you hit the car lot and you're test driving used EVs, open your phone and take a look at the Recurrent website and run a quick report.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you so much for once again sharing with me and everybody the value of what Recurrent is doing. It is one of those things that I feel very strongly about getting this information out into as many people as possible. You guys are if there were EV gods, you're doing the work of the EV gods, certainly. No, I have yet to encounter any other company that is really providing the specific type of value that you are to the entire EV community. So I want to thank you for your time, but I also want to thank you very much for the work that you are doing.
Well, it goes both ways, Zach. We're so thankful for your time and the work that you're doing at EV Resource. And so keep up the good work, and we'll check in when we have more data for you.
And I definitely want to thank all of you for watching and listening to this episode of the EV Resource Podcast. I really genuinely hope that you all got a lot of great information about Recurrent. And if you do get the chance, go to their website, recurrentauto.com. Sign up for their monthly reports. There's a lot of valuable information. And since we recorded this interview, I have received now my December report, the first one for the Model 3, and it is packed full of so much information, a lot of great value in there. I'm super excited about it. Of course, I love data, so of course I'm going to be excited about it. But if you want to get information about your EV, definitely go to the website and sign up for the monthly battery report. You will not be disappointed. So that is all for this week. Thank you so much for watching and listening. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I am going to have another audio only for the news from this week because CES was just a wealth of information that was coming out of that. So I want to make sure that's covered. But thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.